On October 23, the basketball world was left reeling as explosive news broke. Shanta Billups was allegedly caught in a dangerous, Mafia-linked gambling scandal. The rumors sent shockwaves across the sports world, and when Shaq was asked to react, his words left everyone stunned.
No, everybody that's at play. And I don't like to sit up here and be hypocritical about certain things.
On October 23, the basketball world was left reeling as explosive news broke. Shanta Billups was allegedly caught in a dangerous, Mafia-linked gambling scandal. The rumors sent shockwaves across the sports world, and when Shaq was asked to react, his words left everyone stunned.
Today we are here in New York to announce a historic arrest across a wide-sweeping criminal enterprise that envelops both the NBA and La Casa Nostra. The men and women up here standing with me represent a small portion of the leadership team that brought profound justice in an era that needed it more than ever.
When FBI Director Kash Patel himself stepped up to the podium alongside multiple federal agencies, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of New York, the NYPD Homeland Security Investigations, and the Waterfront Commission, everyone immediately understood the gravity of the moment. The FBI director rarely appears at a press conference, and only for cases of unprecedented significance. As he began to speak, the full scale of the investigation sent chills through the nation. It wasn't just one criminal operation that had been uncovered, but two massive parallel schemes. Sometimes intersecting, sometimes operating independently, yet always driven by the same goal: defraud victims, manipulate outcomes, and rake in tens of millions of dollars through illicit means. The first, codenamed Operation Nothing But Bet, targeted insider sports betting within the NBA. Allegedly, players and coaches leaked confidential information, player injuries, availability, and game strategies, to betting rings, allowing massive wagers on prop bets with near-certain outcomes. The second, more sinister and elaborate operation, Operation Royal Flush, revealed a nationwide network of rigged poker games orchestrated by four powerful mafia families: Bonanno, Gambino, Geneves, and Lasisi. Prosecutors called it one of the most sophisticated gambling frauds ever uncovered in the United States, a chilling reminder of how deeply organized crime had infiltrated the world of sports and gaming.
A coordinated takedown across 11 states to arrest over 30 individuals today responsible for this case, which is very much ongoing. Not only did we crack into the fraud that these perpetrators committed on the grand stage of the NBA, but we also entered and executed a system of justice against La Casa Nostra, to include the Bonanno, Gambino, Genovese, and Lucchese.
The numbers alone were staggering. Over 30 individuals arrested across 11 states, facing charges ranging from wire fraud to money laundering, from extortion to armed robbery. At the center of it all were names every basketball fan knew, names synonymous with greatness, championship pedigree, and the kind of success young players only dream of. Shanta Billups, Mr. Big Shot himself. A five-time NBA All-Star, 2004 NBA Finals MVP, who led the Detroit Pistons to a championship. A Namath Basketball Hall of Fame inductee just 1 year prior, in 2024. And as of that fateful morning in October, the head coach of the Portland Trail Blazers, a position he had held with respect and admiration since 2021. How could someone with such an illustrious career, someone who had achieved it all, find themselves handcuffed and facing federal charges that could mean decades behind bars? Then there was Terry Rozier. At just 31, in the prime of his career, earning $96.3 million over 4 years, a proven scoring threat in the league. Everything to lose, and yet, according to federal prosecutors, he allegedly threw it all away, for what amounted to mere pocket change compared to his salary. The allegations were chilling. Rozier allegedly provided insider information about his own performance, texting associates that he would leave games early with fake injuries, enabling betting rings to cash in on under-prop bets. One glaring example went viral. March 23, 2023, Charlotte Hornets vs. New Orleans Pelicans. That night, Rozier allegedly texted his childhood friend, Dairo Lur, saying he planned to exit the game early due to a shoulder injury. True to his word, Rozier played just 9 minutes and 34 seconds. The syndicate, armed with insider knowledge, placed over $200,000 in wagers on under bets for his points, rebounds, and assists. When he left the court, those bets hit. Massive payouts followed, delivered to Rozier's own home for counting. But here's where it gets even darker. Following the arrests, social media exploded with rumors of new footage showing NBA players begging Shanta Billups not to expose them. Memes, wild speculation, and theories about implicated teams spread like wildfire. Let's be clear. After exhaustive research across news sources, federal indictments, court filings, and social platforms, no credible evidence exists of such footage. No videos, no audio, no players begging anyone. This is a case of internet speculation fueled by shock and human tendency to fill gaps with drama. What is real, however, is far more disturbing. Federal investigators documented a systematically organized criminal enterprise operating for years, recruiting NBA figures as face cards, celebrities whose names and reputations lured wealthy victims into high-stakes poker games rigged from the start. This wasn't a few bad actors. This was a calculated empire of deceit, greed, and manipulation at the highest levels.
Fraud is mind-boggling. It's not hundreds of dollars. It's not thousands of dollars. It's not tens of thousands of dollars. It's not even millions of dollars. We're talking about tens of millions of dollars in fraud and theft and robbery across a
According to the indictments unsealed on October 23rd, the poker scheme alone defrauded victims of at least $715 million, but the real number is almost certainly far higher, as investigations continue and more victims come forward. One person reportedly lost $1.8 million in these rigged games. These weren't backroom card games in smoky basements. These were high-stakes operations held in the country's most exclusive locations: luxury Hamptons estates, lavish suites in Las Vegas, upscale Miami venues, and Manhattan penthouses. Victims believed they were playing legitimate poker with NBA legends and current stars, thinking skill and luck would decide the outcome. What they didn't know, what they could never have imagined, was that everyone else at the table was part of the scam. The dealer was in on it. The other players were in on it. Even the so-called face cards, famous athletes whose presence gave the game's credibility, were allegedly part of the conspiracy. Erupts, according to federal prosecutors, took part in at least one 2019 game that defrauded victims of $50,000, with the proceeds divided among cheaters, dealers, and organizers. But his role allegedly went far beyond lending credibility. Court documents suggest he may have also participated in the NBA betting scheme, identified as co-conspirator 8, an Oregon resident, former player, 1997 to 2014, and coach since 2021, details that match Erupts exactly. If true, he allegedly tipped off bettors that the Trailblazers would rest star players before a critical March 24, 2023 game against the Chicago Bulls, leading to a 28-point blowout and massive wins for the syndicate. Following the money and the mob, federal prosecutors uncovered a criminal enterprise years in the making. A sophisticated network blending cutting-edge technology, old-school organized crime tactics, and the magnetic allure of celebrity into a perfect storm of fraud. The poker scheme, which prosecutors say began in 2019, relied on an intricate web of participants, each with a precise role to ensure wealthy victims, dubbed fish by the syndicate, were systematically drained of their money, never realizing they were swimming in a tank full of sharks. These were no street-level hustlers running three-card Monte. They were highly organized criminals, backed by some of the most powerful and feared crime families in American history, with access to technology most people couldn't even imagine.
Games in the New York area were backed by the Bonanno, Gambino, and Genovese crime families of La Cosa Nostra.
The involvement of four separate La Cosa Nostra families, Bonanno, Gambino, Genoves, and Lucchese, working together is extraordinarily rare, underscoring the massive profits at stake. Traditionally, these families operate independently, each guarding their territories and rackets, sometimes clashing over turf or business disputes. For all four to collaborate on a single operation indicates the money flowing through these poker games was enormous. Enough to justify pooling resources, sharing technology, and splitting the proceeds rather than risking internal warfare. Federal authorities revealed that at least 13 defendants in the poker case had direct ties to these mafia families, including capos, captains, and soldiers, actual members bound by blood oaths of loyalty. These weren't mere associates or hangers-on. They were full-fledged members of La Cosa Nostra, running rigged poker games and using NBA players and coaches as bait. Shanta Erupts' alleged role as a face card was critical. Think from the perspective of a wealthy businessman, tech entrepreneur, or hedge fund manager, invited to a high-stakes poker game where a Hall of Fame NBA coach sits across the table. Your guard drops immediately. You think, this must be legitimate. Why would a Hall of Famer risk his reputation? That's exactly what the organizers were counting on. Erupts wasn't alone. Damon DJ Jones, former NBA player and assistant coach with stints at Cleveland Cavaliers and Miami Heat, was also arrested and charged in both the poker and sports betting schemes. Jones allegedly acted as a bridge between the two operations, using league connections to gather inside information on player injuries and game plans, while lending credibility at poker tables. The cheating technology was mind-blowing. Federal agents seized custom-modified shuffling machines, Deckmate 2 units purchased off the shelf and altered by tech specialists with hidden cameras and wireless transmitters. As cards were shuffled and dealt, these machines read the order of the entire deck via RFID chips or barcode scanning. That information was transmitted in real time to someone off-site, sometimes in another room or building, who then relayed the data to conspirators at the table using encrypted cell phones, earpieces, or coded signals. It didn't stop there. X-ray tables allowed conspirators, wearing special glasses or using hidden cameras, to literally see through face-down cards. Marked decks paired with special contact lenses made invisible markings visible. Poker chip trays contained hidden cameras capturing every dealt or discarded card. Every angle was covered. Every possible edge exploited. Victims had virtually no chance to win. And if by some miracle they got lucky, the game would be paused or the victim encouraged to play one more hand until conspirators recovered their losses. And when victims couldn't pay, that's where the mafia's dark power came into play. The families didn't just provide backing, they enforced the debts. Threats, intimidation, violence, and in at least one documented case, armed robbery were used. Federal prosecutors detailed a victim tracked down and threatened for non-payment. In another case, armed robbers specifically retrieved a rigged shuffling machine to prevent its discovery by authorities. This wasn't your typical white-collar crime, where a handshake and a fine suffice. This was organized crime in its rawest form, where debts were enforced through fear and violence. Now, the sports betting side of the operation is where the NBA implications become even darker. Federal prosecutors say the scheme, running from December 2022 through March 2024, manipulated at least 7 NBA games using insider information about player availability, injuries, and game strategies not yet public. The model was simple yet sophisticated. Find someone with inside access, a player, coach, trainer, or staff member, and convince them to feed critical information to bettors, who could then place massive wagers with near-guaranteed outcomes. Terry Rozier's alleged involvement is the clearest example. On March 23, 2023, while playing for the Charlotte Hornets, he allegedly texted his childhood friend, Dairo Lur, claiming he would leave the game early due to a shoulder injury, a pre-planned exit to manipulate bets. Armed with this insider knowledge, Lur and the betting syndicate placed over $200,000 on under-prop bets. Fewer points, fewer rebounds, fewer assists. Rozier left the game after just 9 minutes and 34 seconds, scoring only a handful of points. Every bet hit, generating tens of thousands in profit. The footage of his exit went viral, with millions scrutinizing his body language, timing, and whether the injury was faked. What makes this worse? The NBA had already investigated the incident after DraftKings flagged unusual betting patterns. At the time, they concluded there wasn't enough evidence to act. But federal investigators, armed with wiretaps, subpoenas, text messages, and financial records, built a far more comprehensive case. Rozier's alleged scheme wasn't isolated. Indictments detail multiple games allegedly manipulated using insider info. Damon Jones, former player and assistant coach, reportedly sold information about LeBron James' unreported foot injury before a Lakers-Bucks game in February 2023, and leaked Lakers player availability before a January 2024 game against the Oklahoma City Thunder. An unnamed Orlando Magic player allegedly tipped off bettors before an April 2023 Cavaliers game. And then there's co-conspirator 8, widely believed to be Shanta Billups. Prosecutors claim he tipped off bettors that the Portland Trail Blazers would rest star players, Damian Lillard, Joseph Nurkic, Jeremy Grant, and Anthony Simons, before a March 24, 2023 game against the Chicago Bulls. Portland was blown out by 28 points, and those with insider knowledge cashed in on spread bets and under totals. The fallout was immediate. The NBA went into crisis mode. Within hours, the league issued statements emphasizing integrity, but behind closed doors, panic rippled through league offices, team staff, and player associations. Billups and Rozier were placed on indefinite leave. Portland named assistant coach Tiago Splitter as interim head coach, while the Miami Heat sidelined Rozier pending legal proceedings. These weren't temporary suspensions. They could become permanent separations depending on the criminal trials. The NBA's rules on gambling are strict for a reason. Article 35 empowers the commissioner to impose severe discipline, including lifetime bans. John Tay Porter, a two-way player for the Raptors, was banned for life in April 2024 after pleading guilty to a similar prop betting scheme. If Rozier is convicted of wire fraud conspiracy and money laundering conspiracy, he could face a lifetime NBA ban, voiding his contract and costing the Miami Heat $26.6 million in future salary. For a player in his prime, this is a catastrophic fall. From elite athlete to convicted felon barred from ever playing again. Billups' case differs slightly as a coach, but the potential consequences are no less severe. He could be fired, face league suspension, and potentially never work in professional basketball again, erasing a carefully built 17-year legacy as a player and coach. Federal wire fraud and money laundering charges carry maximum sentences of up to 20 years per count, though first-time offenders may see reduced time through plea deals. That we're still looking at the very real possibility of substantial prison time. Federal prosecutors have made it clear, they view these cases as a direct threat to the integrity of professional sports and intend to pursue significant penalties, sending a stark warning to anyone even tempted to engage in similar conduct. The reactions from current and former NBA players have been a mix of shock, disappointment, and anger. On TNT's Inside the NBA, the panel featuring Shaquille O'Neal, Charles Barkley, and Kenny Smith dissected the scandal in depth. Shaq's comments were particularly raw and emotional. He admitted the temptation that gambling can present, confessing he had been in situations where he could have made similar mistakes. But he emphasized one key point. Every player knows the rules and understands the consequences. Charles Barkley was blunt. He called the defendants stupid for risking everything for sums that are trivial compared to their salaries. His point hit hard with fans and observers alike. Why would a player like Terry Rozier, earning $26 million a year, risk it all just to help someone make $50,000 or $100,000 on prop bets? Why would a Hall of Fame coach with a secure position and a legacy to protect get involved in mafia-backed poker scams? The sheer audacity and recklessness of it all has left the basketball world staggered, struggling to comprehend how such high-profile figures could jeopardize careers, reputations, and lives for greed and short-term gain. Kenny Smith offered a more nuanced perspective, suggesting that gambling addiction could explain some of the seemingly irrational behavior, noting that addiction causes people to make illogical decisions regardless of their financial status. He pointed out that the FBI director had mentioned one victim who lost $1.8 million in the rigged poker games, which means that person had substantial wealth, but still got caught up in the addiction cycle. This debate between Barkley and Smith actually highlights a critical question that this entire scandal raises. Is this about greed, stupidity, addiction, or something else entirely? The truth is probably that different participants had different motivations. Some may have been struggling with genuine gambling addictions. Others may have been motivated purely by greed, seeing an opportunity to make easy money. Still others, particularly those with organized crime connections, may have been operating from a place of calculated criminal enterprise, viewing the NBA figures as useful tools to be exploited. The broader implications for the NBA and professional sports as a whole cannot be overstated. This scandal comes at a time when sports gambling has exploded across America following the 2018 Supreme Court decision that struck down PASPA, the Professional and Amateur Sports Protection Act, opening the floodgates for legalized sports betting in dozens of states. The NBA along with other major sports leagues embraced this shift, signing massive partnership deals with companies like DraftKings, FanDuel, and BetMGM. These partnerships have been incredibly lucrative for the league, generating hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue through advertising, sponsorships, and data licensing agreements. But they've also created an environment where the line between legitimate fandom and gambling interest has become increasingly blurred. Broadcasts now regularly feature betting odds, prop bet suggestions, and real-time updates on how games are affecting betting lines. Apps allow fans to place bets from their phones in seconds, making gambling as easy as checking a score. Critics have argued that the NBA and other leagues have effectively invited this kind of scandal by so thoroughly integrating gambling into the fan experience without adequate safeguards. Commissioner Adam Silver has defended the league's approach, noting that the NBA worked to implement monitoring systems and education programs to prevent exactly this kind of manipulation. But clearly those measures weren't enough to stop a multi-year conspiracy involving players, coaches, organized crime, and sophisticated technology. Looking forward, the NBA faces some difficult decisions about how to proceed. Enhanced injury reporting protocols are likely, requiring teams to disclose player availability earlier and with more detail to reduce the window where insider information provides an advantage. Stricter limits on prop betting, particularly on two-way players or players with minimal minutes, are already being implemented following the Jonty Porter case. Some have called for federal legislation to standardize sports betting regulations across states and provide clearer guidelines for what constitutes illegal manipulation versus legitimate wagering. The investigation is far from over. Federal prosecutors have made it clear that more indictments could be coming with ongoing probes into potential college basketball connections and other professional sports figures who may have been involved in similar schemes. The FBI has encouraged anyone with information about illegal gambling or game manipulation to come forward, suggesting they believe there are still stones left unturned. That brings us to the end of this story. For more interesting videos like this, click on the cards on your screen.